Hello and welcome to Government in Action. With me in studio to reflect on government's performance for the past 3 years is none other than the Minister of Housing and Water, the Honorable Collin Croal. Minister, thank you very much for taking the time out to be here in this studio. And so let's get right into our question for this little conversation that we're expected to have. What notable achievements have the Ministry of Housing made since taking office in August 2020?
Let me start off by firstly thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to join in these kind of interviews, to be able to explain to the population what we're doing, what we have done, to account for our work. We got elected based on a commitment, and it is good to be held accountable by the population. Having said that, by reflecting as time has flown by, it's good 3 years, going on to 3 years already. A lot. If you talk about housing sector, it's a lot. But maybe let's dissect it a little. What were our commitments? First of all, we committed an allocation to the people of Guyana of 10,000 annually. 10,000 lots annually. Where are we now? We are over 24,000, if basically 3 years. And so we are well on way on our achieving our target. And this is a lot of work, because it's not just about merely allocating, but you have to find land. You have to be able to match that with resources to be able to do the infrastructure work. And so we're proud of what we've achieved to date. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is to speak about ownership. So it's one thing to allocate, but then we also have to talk about home ownership. And therein now is the construction houses. Now, this was not a manifesto commitment to say we will build X amount of houses, but we've committed to ensure that we provide for our people. And so we have built to date, in total in the 3 years, we have about 2,000 houses. Of that, close to 1,000 we have completed the construction. And this is various categories. It's not just about one particular category. Sometimes the popular one is always the young professional houses. But we have by and large about three categories. There's low income, and these are the 2 bedrooms, and these cater for a certain level of our society and based on their affordability. Then we have what is called the moderate income houses, and we also have the young professionals, more of the high income. Of course, there's elevated, there's flat, in terms of the physical, but those are the classifications. And it's in that short period of time, just go to Cummings Lodge. Go see the houses that are being constructed. Go to LBI now, you'll see young professional houses being constructed. Go to the East Bank, go to Perseverance, you'll see houses that were constructed and being constructed. Go to Region 3, you will see houses being constructed. And so we can we can show you. Go to Region 6, just as you cross the Berbice Bridge, look on your right hand side. That lovely picture you see there, that lovely view, houses being constructed. Go to Williamsburg, Hampshire, another set of houses being constructed. So that is another aspect in terms of what we have achieved in terms of this period of time. Then I also want to speak about ownership in the sense of you've acquired your lot. Now, I can say I own this lot, and that is through certificate of title or transport. So we have been on a robust exercise to process ownership for persons to be able to complete those transactions. Of course, the system, when we met, there was a lot of land. Sometimes lands are allocated and we don't own the land legally, and there's a process that it has to go through, whether it's from Lands and Survey, whether it's from Gaisuko, and you name it, if it's Region 5, MMA, etc. So there's a process that has to go through legally, and then have it transferred, and you do the necessary block titles and so forth. So those block titles, then you further subdivide it. So there's a process. But we are talking about, in this period of time, we are talking about over processing 6,000 titles, certificated titles or transports in this short period of time. And so we're working hard to clear up, because in some of those cases too now we have, I shall speak about too as part of what we've been able to achieve, and that is in terms of regularization. That is, you have a number of areas where we're addressing squatting, and so we have a zero tolerance in the sense of saying no new squatting. However, we recognize what we met. We know we have an assessment of what we met. And so this goes through an evaluation as to see if the area can be regularized. And if it cannot, well then, we have a relocation plan. Like for example, we did relocation Annandale. We're working now relocation plan as committed by the president on the riverbank or for the East Bank. We did one for expansion of the 4-lane for Mocha, and this is a continue. But then you also have regularization, and so that's one aspect. Then I want to speak a little in terms of legislation, and there are two aspects. When we got in, the Condominium Act. We've passed that. Short period of time. What that does, it also addresses the duplexes. So our legislation previously catered for just single ownership. So in this one space, and there's a single ownership, but when they have subdivided it, town halls, condominiums, etc., could not have been addressed and processed. You could not get your title. We have passed that legislation. We've addressed that. So that we have done in a short period of time, and so think about that. Then I also want to speak about the single window processing unit, whereby, and that is for electronic single window. So we're at a stage now where we've just at the last parliamentary sitting, we passed that legislation in Parliament. It went to a select committee. We had five sittings in the special select committee. Based on a request of the opposition, we listened to them, we made some adjustments, accommodated, and so the electronic single window system will totally transform the way how we do business for your application permits, construction application permits. Here you go one stop, one agency, the Central Housing and Planning Authority, make that single application, and then it goes through a simultaneous process, not sequential. So that will mean it goes then to the local authorities in terms of their plans. It goes, if it's an environmental matter that may be affected, then it goes to EPA. If it's probably for fire, then they'll have their input. Whoever it is that is affected, there's a checklist. We have a schedule, and those are the agencies that will have to provide their response. Now, inherent in this now, which we'll speak about more, you'll hear more about, is the regulations now to go with this. That is the timelines. Because what this legislation allows to do is to make persons be accountable, be responsible. It takes away the subjectivity in approvals. So no longer do I have to come and I'm running behind you and making phone calls, and it's there, and then it goes through an automatic process. And if you don't respond by X time, then it will be deemed as having a no objection, meaning at the agency level. And so we've put a number of measures there to account. And certainly the dynamism of this, it means that complaint, on average, takes maybe about 208 days when one makes an application. That is what the studies showed. Some people may say longer, so be it. But that will be totally changed. And so now you can be anywhere in this world, go on a platform, enter your application, and it goes through the process. Now, sometime in August, we'll be launching the online platform. And again, that's why I said to you, this will change completely the way how we do business as a government. This brings, obviously, when you always hear about the index of speaking of ease of doing business. This is addressing that, of course, along with what is happening under the Ministry of Business, because in terms of registration of businesses and so that process. But this here now is for construction permit. So it removes of somebody messaging me, or somebody gives a phone call to say your agency is taking forever with my application. And oftentimes it's not CHPA was the hold up. It is sometimes because we are waiting on their responses from those respective agencies, including the local authorities, for whom had to give the approval for the plans. And then we're waiting because can't send it further on to the board for approval, simply because we didn't have the necessary supporting information. Civil aviation, all of those, depends if you're talking about height. They will have an input in terms of those application forms. So this is something you'll be hearing us speaking much more about. We very shortly we'll be going through another round of engagement with the sectors, the various sector agencies, ministries, and local authorities, because previously consultations were done with the accounting officer level, that is overseers and the town clerks. Now it's going to include elected officials. So we're happy about that. Then I want to speak about, I spoke briefly about the infrastructure.
Yes.
But when I talk about infrastructure, we are talking about new establishment of new areas across our country. I can safely say in this short 3 years in office, we have established about close to 50 locations or new areas as part of our development. So you see allocations being done, and then you see the infrastructure follow. In our case, when we got into office, we had to address allocation exercises that were done under the previous government tenure, for which no infrastructure work was done. We had to address that. We have done that. We have those, contrary to ITC what was peddled, we did not tamper with any of those applications. We went through with the allocations. We went through with those allocations, and what we did was the infrastructure work for them. And so you have close to 50 areas for development of new areas that sees over 20,000 persons accessing their land. This is an opportunity for them to build. So this is in addition to our housing being constructed, but this is now persons who can build on their own. And so in those summary, because there's so much we can go into detail, I can go into all the areas we have developed, but certainly, and when we talk about development in new areas, it's not just for residential purpose, it's also for industrial, commercial purposes too, because you have hubs. Right now, you have the East Bank, basically provides a hub for the oil and gas sector, a lot of warehousing, etc. We have established, for example, you've heard us speak about Enmore, Fowles, as another hub being established for the industrial, commercial. Well, we're looking at a lot of the creation of employment in terms of fabrication type of activities and so forth. So different. Every region has seen an injection of development of new area for housing development, and I repeat, every region.
Interesting. I noted you talk about the infrastructure, and by that little discussion there that you shared with me, you would have answered three of my questions, or almost four. But could you delve a little bit more into explaining what some of the infrastructure entails in terms of the works?
Sure. So let's picture this scenario first of all. Pick any area that you know, whether it's on the East Coast, since we're concentrating a lot on the East Coast now because East Bank, we reached to that point of saturation. You go there, the land was either lying there, obviously, with no development, or it was previously used for sugarcane purpose. But the bottom line is zero development, virgin land. That's the first thing. So you have to build access roads. And that is why our infrastructure costs for development of these areas is much more, because we are starting from scratch. It's not where we're talking about rehabilitation. This is new development. So on average, if about $3 to $3.5 million is an estimated for the infrastructure cost for every lot that you're developing within the space where you live. So that we have to build the access road. Then of course we have to tackle the drainage. That is key, because many of those lands are flooded. Previously were holding lands for water. Go on the East Bank, similarly, we're having a lot of issues there because as we're going inwards. And then in addition to the drainage, then you have to also deal with culverts establishment of the roads. And so that means digging out any slush, and then you do sand filling, and you do developing of the roads completely. So the forest phase infrastructure we speak about will involve being to probably about crusher run level for forest phase. But it includes also the utilities. So in our housing schemes that we're developing, we run the pipes for the water, and we also put the electricity, the poles for electricity. So what happens is that when we finish with the interconnection, GWI from whichever way source, they will connect to our area. GPL similarly, they will do the connection for the area, and of course they will the transformers to test what is happening. So that is what we do when we talk about infrastructure development. So it's providing access once we show you the land. And so maybe I can answer this too. A lot of persons have been asking. When we allocate, we then develop that area. We do not show you your area or do not process that agreement until we can show you your land, because for many reasons. One, obviously, we have our end is to provide that lot to you, the access. But secondly, also to match, because you have to these there are plans that are prepared, and so you have to match the description. So in case there's any shift when sometimes we allocate, and then when we do the go actually on the ground, there may be a hiccup, there may be a particular lot that we have to condemn, whatever it is, and you have to shift the lot numbers. But that's what we mean when we talk about the infrastructure. We talk about first phase infrastructure. And as the occupancy develop, as the more persons come into the area, then we move to a level of the road being perfect.
That's major improvement, because I can recall when I applied and got through with my land allocation, it was merely bush we were going through with the surveyor. But here, listening you explain what the infrastructure details or involves, then you understand the investment. And the thing is, you're not even selling those lots at the same value of the investment that you put.
All the lots, they are subsidized. And so we do the bushing, and of course we put the poles so that you can know where your boundary lies for the surveyors, and that's when we show you your lot. So sometimes you see we have exercises that speaks about showing of lots. For example, earlier this week we had an exercise region 10 for phase 4 of Amelia's ward, because the people want access, so as the blocks become available and as we put the poles, we show you so that you don't necessarily have to wait for the whole area to develop, right, as we move onwards.
Lastly, Minister, what are the ministry's goals for housing development and addressing Guyanese housing difficulties for the coming years?
All right. So, but before I answer that, if time
Go
permits,
ahead.
we have not spoken about something that has transformed our communities, and that is connecting our communities. And just use right here, use the East Bank. And so we're talking about building of interconnecting roads, building of 4 lanes. That's a major achievement for us under the Ministry of Housing. And so if one could start off, first of all, you had that interlink that took you all the way to Diamond. And then we had the 4 lane from Mandela to Eccles. Now we have from Eccles to Diamond in the first instance, which is nearing completion and which will have a commission at some point soon. We then did an extension from Diamond that goes at the back, comes out at Diamond. And soon you'll hear about a further extension from Diamond, to Great Diamond, then to Diamond. And then you'll hear a further extension from Diamond that goes to Craig. Go across, it's not finished yet. Then you go across the river. You know that bottleneck, if you're on the West Bank, West Coast, turn right, and between there, so maybe about Bester's Crane, very well where we're coming out, the congestion at Vreeden Hoop. So you're cutting out all of that. So you're talking about Schooner to Crane. That's another 4 lane being built there, and we're moving quickly to have all of that. You heard the timeline that was provided by October. So in time for Christmas, ease the congestion. So 4 lanes, interconnecting roads, it's a major achievement for us too. Then we also have right now the Eccles Industrial Road that you see workers are, well, they're now doing the final layer for the bitumen. Between that is between somewhere from the 4 lane, well, for the bridge to somewhere by Windsor. So they've just laid the final layer, and then they'll do the works at the corner. So a lovely site, and so certainly that is part of what we're doing. But all of these will have an interconnecting too, because our communities are going to be interconnected. So for example, just like what we're doing on the East Bank, similarly we'll see at parallel at the East Coast. So all, like for example, right now we're concentrating on allocation exercises on the East Coast, going inwards. But there will be a road that you can drive from Aubrey Barker Road, or maybe if you want to say the roundabout, and you just keep driving, and we'll reach all the way to Enmore Falls. That's next on our massive plan to interconnect the communities. Now, you talk about goals.
Yes, and future.
Let's start. Our overall target. First of all, we spoke about allocations. 50,000 allocations by our 50th year, meaning 10,000 annually. We will achieve that. We're on track for that. Similarly, for construction of houses, making more homes available for citizens, we have a robust program, and then during our building expo, we have our upcoming building expo. You'll hear more about home construction that we're looking forward to. So you'll hear more and more persons coming on board. And notice, despite all the talk about increasing prices for the construction material, or the prices for our houses were basically consistent. And that is because to ensure that it is affordable. So we have various categories, as I said, and that is to ensure that you have equitable. When we want to talk about equitable distribution, that's an example of equitable distribution to the different size houses, affordability of loan to different categories, to help persons who may not be able to the basic bracket, or you reach a certain level and you want to go higher, then you have affordability of another house. We didn't talk about the steel and cement. I said there's so much in housing that is happening. You recall His Excellency on the 22nd of July last year announced this initiative, the Steel and Cement Initiative. 788 approvals for steel and cement across the coastline to date. And so that is initiative of on the $6 million assistance with the steel and 1 sling of cement for a foundation, above $6 million to $25 million, 2 slings of cement. And so that is going well, and that has been helping. That has been very impactful on persons to help the construction. So you'll have the continuation of the steel and cement program to help in our construction. Similarly, you see the construction of core homes. That continues, that program continues. We also have, and I just spoke on Coast, and I didn't even tell you about the hinterland, and we also have the hinterland housing program. We have right now for this next phase over 300 houses across the 4 main regions, 1, 7, 8, and 9. And of course, this is coming from our budget. This is coming from the tax, from our resources injected by government. And so we'll continue to do that. Similarly, we'll continue to address a number of unregulated areas, because we want to remove the stigma and deal aggressively and continue the program. You heard the president announced 2 weeks ago a robust program, so Operation Cleanup, because this has to end. We just can't believe that we can see any land occupied and then ask for it. It has to end. And so that's why I'm saying we are zero policy on new squatting, but we are committed to addressing a number of the old areas in completing their ownership. And so our work continues, and we're growing so fast. That is why we have now embarked on construction of our new head office, because to consolidate where we at, a lot of work is happening at the same time. And of course, we'll continue processing our certificated titles and transports to ensure that we have persons be able to have that document, so that generations to come, that it's there. Your children, many people leave that for their children or whoever they pass on, but you have security of tenure. Remove that issue of all the complaints about rental, in-laws, whatever, you name it, or whatever problem. you name it. So we'll continue, and then of course more construction of development of new areas for our housing program will continue, and we have our allocation exercises that are going, and this forms part of our program for when we're preparing our budget. So for example, currently for this 2023, we have committed in contracts $54 billion signed. These when you take in consideration the existing 4 lanes, as well as the construction of the construction infrastructure work for new housing areas right across our country, whether it's Region 2, Charity on the naming, Region 3, well, of course, Region 4, the East Coast and East Bank. Region 5, we're working, we have Baltiok, Shieldstown, you name it, experiment. We've just completed the experiment. So Burma, then you go over to Region 6. We're trying to find additional land, but we were focused on the 75, 76. Only this morning, we hosted a meeting with the head of Lagana Lands and Survey Commission, the head of NISIL, because we're trying to acquire new lands, as well as to sort out ownership, because there's a process, as I said earlier. Region 7, Bartica, similarly, we have the land clearance has commenced. It's ongoing, and we're going to construct houses in Region 7. Region 9, no exception. You have, which we didn't speak about, then you have the initiative announced by His Excellency, and that is for the $3 million of utilization of local, meaning the blocks, and the indigenous materials, meaning for the blocks that they make. And so the government of Guyana contributes $1 million, and you, the beneficiary, contribute $2 million for those $3 million houses. Those are ongoing. We have 100 in total that are committed in the first phase. His Excellency had committed 600 houses as part of that program. Even there, we have a new housing area that has been developed in Letem, previously called Pogue Bridge, but we call it now Letem Tract A. Region 10, no exception, houses to be constructed. And so we've started the land clearance for the construction of those houses for Region 10 as well. We did do allocations exercises, and what we had earlier for showing that is Amelia's Ward. And speaking about Region 10 and Amelia's Ward, we're also addressing the squatting issue too in Region 10. And as similarly part of regularization, you saw earlier Blueberry Hill, they received their tithe, but we also have Amelia's Ward where we have to sort out squatting. And the cream of the crop, the much touted Silica City.
Yes. I was going to come to that.
Okay. So our work is the land clearance is nearing completion. We're putting all together now to start the construction. One of the model house one of the design for the house that we'll be building at the Silica City will be on showcase at the Building Expo. So we do have houses that are on showcase at the Building Expo. The houses that we built, so you can see, you can walk inside, and that's why we're having this. So you can walk inside, you see it, you have appreciation of the size, so it helps you as part of your decision making. And certainly, so we look forward to all to come to Building Expo, August 24th to 27th. I know I'm excited about it. It's a busy period for us. You can't even walk that place in one day. They may look small, but if the amount of booths, we have over 380 booths we have catered to date, and then if need be, we've been able to do expansion. So a lot to look forward to.
Honorable Minister Collin Croal, thank you very much for taking the time out, Minister of Housing and Water. And thank you, those of you who've been watching, citizens of Guyana, those in the diaspora. You have been watching Government in Action. I've been your host, Lennox Gasper, saying until next time, good night.